Hey y'all, Scott here. Gosh, I want to play this video game, but it's just too complicated. I don't know. Bingo!
How do you know Grandpa will like a video game?
I just know.
But hey, sometimes it can be hard to tell, which is where Nintendo comes into the picture. See, during the reign of the Nintendo DS and Wii systems, more people than ever before were picking these things up to play a bit of Brain Age, Nintendogs, Wii Fit, games that anybody could understand regardless of their level of gaming know-how. Which is why Nintendo started labeling these games as, you fucking idiot, you don't know as much as I did. Seriously, you later known as touch generations.
Yeah, you ever pick up a game from one of these two systems and notice that little logo in the corner? I mean, it was pretty easy to put two and two together. Pretty much any game with the Touch Generations logo was very accessible and appealed to a much wider demographic than 25-year-old white boy. Makes you wonder why they chose the name Touch Generations when they could have gone for the much more blatant, buy this, Grandpa. Because what does this mean? Is this logo supposed to speak to the casuals like, that's me! But hey, anything to help Grandpa buy me a video game can't hurt. Grandpa, that's arsenic!
Touch Generations isn't a series per se, rather a marketing line, giving specific DS and Wii games the logo to show how they're fine-tuned for a general audience, unlike some games like Fossil Fighters. Dad, stay away! This logo was introduced on June 5th, 2006 here in North America with the games Big Brain Academy and Magnetica, and shortly after, many previously released titles would be re-released with the logo now in the box art's corner. Was anything else changed?
The printer used more ink.
This logo is something added after the fact. It never really felt like Nintendo went out of their way to create Touch Generations games. They would make their games and decide later on if it fit the requirements. Now, what were the requirements? This line spanned dozens upon dozens of titles across North America, Europe, Australia, and Japan, some only carrying the Touch Generations logo in specific countries, while either releasing in other regions like normal, or staying exclusive to specific ones. If you want to experience everything Touch Generations had to offer, I mean, man, there are over 50 titles with this branding, and some games that have it in North America don't have it in Europe, and vice versa. There's so many Japanese exclusives. Did everybody who comes up to me for advice on where to start with the Touch Generations games?
There's nobody here. Thank God, I got nothing.
Might as well take a look at all these to see what makes a Touch Generations game a Touch Generations game. Going in no particular order, let's start with Nintendogs. Nintendogs was an absolute phenomenon, being released as numerous different versions, which just changed what breed of dogs you can select at the start. This was one of the best pet simulators of all time. I mean, look at how well animated these dogs are for being 3D models on the damn Nintendo DS. It effectively used the DS touchscreen to the best of its ability, showing how this is a game that just wouldn't have been the same on the PlayStation Portable or on a home console with a standard controller. You needed a touchscreen. You needed a microphone to scream at mammals. And it's all so damn intuitive. It's the first input method you think of when you see a polygonal dog. It all came together. Playing it now, the original Nintendogs, is ridiculously simple. It's just a solid loop of feed dog, clean dog, play dog, walk dog, train dog, win cash. It's still incredibly charming, but I do think a lot of that feeling comes from nostalgia. I played this to death back in 2007. Everything from what you were doing down to how you were doing it was so damn novel. Thus, let's do some math here. We have a pet simulator, which, looking at the craze surrounding Tamagotchis, we know those are big. Using a touchscreen and microphone in 2005 to do things like pet a virtual animal and also do some light voice recognition, which I'm pretty sure around this time we were all struck at light up shoes. Couple that with the pet we were raising being dogs, puppies, not some weird ass creature made up for the game. Now, you show this to Dad and he goes, "That's a dog." Pretty easy to see how Nintendogs appeal to everybody, with its simple and intuitive controls, easy to grasp concept with a theme most general consumers wouldn't be embarrassed to admit they're playing a game about. Ew, you're playing that? And not the sequel? Nintendogs was destined for success, especially in 2005 when we really hadn't seen something like this work so well and be so understandable. And this was all a part of then Nintendo president Satoru Iwata's Blue Ocean strategy, which was to focus on a market that was untapped rather than compete in a market that's already well established, in this case being more core gaming experiences you'd find on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Let's try and attract other people to the world of gaming with different games, simpler games, controllable and intuitive in fun ways. Thus, the Wii, Nintendo DS, and the Touch Generations line as a whole start to make a whole lot more sense. Hey, you can hate these types of games all you want. I'm a gamer. I don't want to pet a dog. I want to f my wife. But you can't deny these led to the insane sales numbers we're seeing with gaming these days. Touch Generations introduced so many to the world of video games who later went on to try more in-depth experiences. So yeah, these games are far more important than I think people give them credit for.
Remove this from the timeline and I might be missing a limb.
100 classic books. What were you expecting? As far as I'm concerned, this game does everything it sets out to do, unlike others. Where the f are the slugs? This title was developed by Genius Seniority after they made Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness. I think Nintendo caught on to how that game used words. So on to 100 classic books for them, a collection of 100 public domain writings from the 1800s. These are all free. What was stopping them from doing 101? And without tiny the DS screens are, they had to blow up the text, so you pretty much get 2 sentences per page now. A book like The Time Machine by H.G. Wells is normally around 84 pages long. In 100 classic books, using the smallest font size option, it is now 649 pages long. And that's just the price you have to pay $20 for 100 public domain books. Come on, man, I can print off PDFs of all these books for free. Okay, so do it.
The point is, Nintendo.
This is one of the most non-games Nintendo's ever created. It doesn't even have an ESRB rating. Though we do have quizzes to take in order to figure out what book we're in the mood for. For what it is, I do find 100 classic books to have a ton of pre-smartphone revolution charm, you know? Something that has absolutely no use today, but you can think back to the late 2000s, early 2010s, and see how this could be kind of convenient. Sure, e-readers like the Kindle and smartphones and tablets were taking off, but they weren't nearly as popular as they are today. So the idea of reading a book on your DS wasn't too absurd. And that can be attributed to the fact many Touch Generations titles, including this one, use the Nintendo DS on its side, like a book. For casual users, I bet this felt far more natural, especially in a game where you're using the stylus to write. And the most iconic title that did this was easily Brain Age. This, alongside Nintendogs, dominated the list of best-selling Nintendo DS games. They helped propel the DS as a standard in anybody's pocket, young or old. It didn't matter, everybody owned Brain Age, because everybody was stupid enough to think it would work. You really thought you'd get smarter by doing 10 math problems a day? It's no wonder the United States cracked down on games claiming to train your brain.
Thank God.
Well, while a game like Brain Age isn't gonna make you smarter, it for sure can make you sharper. Presented by Dr. Kawashima, real guy, just in this game, they took some artistic liberties. He was responsible for loads of studies and eventually a book detailing how basic math problems and other mental exercises can aid in avoiding issues like dementia, for example. Now that doesn't mean this is a surefire way to cure that kind of stuff, but it can help many stay on top of things, and what better way to utilize this research than to create a video game out of it to make it as easy as possible for users to follow Dr. Kawashima's advice. Quick math problems, puzzles, and mental exercises presented in a way that feels more like a high score based video game rather than homework. That's what makes Brain Age special. It has some of the most basic, boring sounding content at its core, math, but turns it into something where you want to get better at solving problems and faster at solving problems. Oh my God! That's 5 gallons of water! Writing out numbers and letters with the stylus mostly works okay. Nintendo, whatever you say in front of me, you can say in front of my 5s. We even have a Sudoku mode. Well, I have some books, so we'll decline. But let's be fair here. Sudoku in Brain Age may be the greatest adaptation of the game. I love how you only have 5 mistakes you can make. It really makes you critically think a lot more, and when you get a number right, the ding sound is so satisfying.
It's easy to write Brain Age off as just math homework with gimmicks to make it all feel more gamey, but there's far more depth to it than it may initially seem. It actually incentivizes you to get better and better at math problems while also being fun.
It must be a witch!
Following up that title was Brain Age 2, which is less of a sequel and more of a second volume. It's not like Brain Age brought to the next level, it's more so Brain Age with different minigames. So I'd say Brain Age 2 isn't really Brain Age 2, it's another Brain Age. These are completely interchangeable. If you didn't play one of them, I don't think that means you're missing out on anything. I think that just means you're a coward. But just a few months after the first Brain Age's release, Nintendo launched Big Brain Academy. What does this game do differently?
deserve at least a teen rating. I never realized how close to each other these two released, which definitely makes me question why. Big Brain Academy is more of a game than Brain Age, which makes me feel like I'm some kind of guinea pig doing an experiment. Big Brain is more colorful and lively, with less of an emphasis on math and more on brain teasers, I guess. It's really hard to say, oh, well, this is why Brain Age exists, and this is why Big Brain Academy exists. Because while they're visually distinct, at the end of the day, these are pretty much the same type of thing. I guess Brain Age is more aimed at older people, while Big Brain Academy is targeted at kids. Okay. Flash Focus was marketed similarly to Brain Age, having a comparable tagline on the front cover. This one's all about training your eyes, being more aware of your surroundings while also staying relaxed. This one doesn't hit nearly as hard as the brain training games. See, those worked because the minigames included were very much the type of things you'd find in homework, but now made fun. You know, that was the point of that title. It gave it purpose, it made it unique. The activities in Flash Focus are like follow the ball under the cup, which is the most overused type of minigame. You'd find that in any Mario Party, yet here, it's stripped down to the bare minimum visually. Sure, that was fine in Brain Age, but here, it feels like they forgot to finish the game. Other exercises can be more visually appealing, but like, this does nothing for me. How is this training my vision? I'm just playing a boxing mini game. If this thing was actually used to judge one's sight, oh, no more corrective lenses for me. Sudoku Gridmaster. Now, I did really enjoy Sudoku in Brain Age, so a full game of nothing but? Why wouldn't you just buy Brain Age? That had Sudoku plus Brain Age. Sudoku Gridmaster is just Sudoku, and it isn't as intuitive or snappy as the mode in Brain Age. There are 400 puzzles in this one though, compared to Brain Age's 100, but after the 100th Sudoku puzzle, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to remember the solutions to the first one, so who cares? Just replay them. This is a perfectly fine Sudoku game at the end of the day, but it's similar to Big Brain Academy in the sense that it has so many of the same things Brain Age has, while also being published by Nintendo within a 3-month window of Brain Age's release. Why not just buy Brain Age? Well, why not be the Gridmaster?
Damn, they got me.
Crosswords DS, or Crossword DS. Has Nintendo ever officially said how to pronounce this title? That's the price you pay for being cute. This is a collection of crossword puzzles. And word searches. This is just nice, you know? There's not much more to it. It feels like Sudoku from Brain Age, but crosswords. There's loads of puzzles, word searches if you're a fucking baby. This, I can see my parents enjoying quite a lot, so it really seems like the Touch Generations line is for them.
With a gun to their head.
Yeah, let's get into some titles that carry the logo that just really should have carried anything else. Not that these are bad games, far from it, but like, Jesus, dude, you're scaring Grandpa. Elite Beat Agents, Rhythm Heaven, Hotel Dusk, Room 215, these are all Touch Generations games, much like how I'm one too. These are all DS classics that are, yes, easier to understand and pick up and play compared to the Dark Spire. But I mean, to my dad, there's not a damn difference between these two. These are a lot more flashy, in your face, and complex compared to the other titles. These are actual video games. Elite Beat Agents is one of the DS's best. It's a rhythm game based on a Japanese-only title that used these guys instead of agents. North America loves agents. But we also love, like, ducks, so I'd be interested to see the reason behind this choice. This game is pure wacky-ass Nintendo. The same wacky-ass Nintendo you'd only expect to see in the Japan-only joints, but no, this is a heavily westernized version of a game from Japan. The visuals are all so mesmerizing to watch. It's over the top and knows that. This game just aims to be fun, not only with presentation, but the gameplay as well. Tap the circles that appear in order to the beat. It's very easy to understand, but incredibly difficult to master, which is a crucial element of some of the greatest games of all time. And do they have a cover of Skater Boy? There's only 19 songs featured throughout the whole game, and they are all covers, but I will give Nintendo this. They are all licensed tracks from actual artists, unlike other rhythm games they've done, where the most they can do is the fucking Pledge of Allegiance. But here, these are legitimate songs, and while they are covers, they're pretty good covers. It all just adds up to this being an essential game in anybody's DS library. Except for Dad. Well, yeah, the gameplay is easy to understand. This does stick out quite a bit as a Touch Generations game. It feels more like they made it one to potentially ease casual players to try something with some kick to it, and thus help a game in a brand new series sell a little better. Damn, if that's what this logo can do, why not put it on everything? Rhythm Heaven is another game I find to be a little peculiar here. I mean, the way Nintendo advertised it initially was almost like this was another form of brain age. Oh, I have to get my rhythm training in for the day. They went above and beyond to attract the casual audience here, creating a whole marketing campaign centered around Beyonce just simply playing the game. Oh man, if Beyonce's playing it, it must be real. Pretty wild the game was marketed like this initially, because I don't know about you, but when I think Rhythm Heaven these days, my mind doesn't go to something they'd get. This series can be so damn difficult sometimes, and the DS one, for me personally, is more complicated than the other entries. Okay, complicated. A branch is more complicated than a stick. Just how the others simply use one button, this one we use the touchscreen and flick it sometimes. Ooh. Regardless, Rhythm Heaven is a joy. One of the most unique and lovable rhythm games of all time. Even if you're real bad at it, you still end each minigame with a smile. Unlike Elite Beat Agents, which actively is telling you exactly when you need to tap the circle, Rhythm Heaven plays everything out in a way where just glancing at it, some people may not realize it's a music game. These are all completely different minigames, but at their core, they're all about keeping the beat, listening to audio cues, and watching the visuals to know the exact right time to tap or hold or flick. It's really cool because something like the Rhythm Rally game, you could technically play that like it was just a standard ping pong game. It would be damn hard, but that prepares you for the rest of life. My uncle died.
I've dealt with harder.
Rhythm Heaven is so unique with how it crafts rhythm minigames that conceptually have nothing to do with rhythm, and because of that, it simultaneously creates a rhythm game that doesn't just involve hitting the right button when the icon hovers over the right area like any other rhythm game. I think contextualizing rhythm in these ways can actually really help you understand music better. I find myself nodding my head to the beat way more playing Rhythm Heaven than in Guitar Hero, for example. And because of that, yeah, honestly, now I can see why Nintendo may have marketed the game like this. In some ways, it is kind of like Brain Age for music, just with a much more fun presentation. Don't get me wrong, this looks fun in one of those less fun than Rhythm Heaven kind of ways, like Taxes. But out of all the games under the Touch Generations label, Rhythm Heaven is one of the most unique, well-designed, and everlasting experiences. We'll get to True Swing Golf, but for now, Hotel Dusk Room 215. Finally, something other than gas prices to confuse the elders. A point-and-click adventure game with 3D first-person movement using the touchscreen. Translation for the casuals?
It just says no.
I get why Nintendo may have considered this a game anybody can get into, a mystery visual novel type experience. Most people can understand that, though I feel this gets a bit too ambitious for a general audience. An impressive game on the DS by all accounts. I mean, they really pushed to create a unique experience visually and gameplay wise. There's not much else like Hotel Dusk, but I feel like a game like Professor Layton is far more casual friendly, with that also being a puzzle game with point and click elements. But guess what got the Touch Generations blessing? Well, that too. Electroplankton. Don't fucking try that. Another game that, oh, I already fucked up. I think it's a bit much to call this a game. It's pretty much a musical, visual, interactive fish moment.
Oh, it's one of those, huh?
Electroplankton is more of an experiment, one that encourages the player to harness their artistic side, to make eloquent movements via the touchscreen to craft unique music heard nowhere else. That's the funny way to say, poke the fish, they scream loud. I don't dislike this experience, but that's all it is, an experience. An experience I find fairly limited in its appeal, one that was sold for $30. You can save the sounds you create. There's nothing to do other than move the electroplankton around to make interesting noises that can sometimes end up sounding like actual music. It's something you could imagine being displayed in an art or science museum, something you could walk right up to and interact with and then move on to the next attraction, which is exactly what the designer Toshio Iwai was known for, interactive art focusing on music that looks exactly like Electroplankton. Within that context, Electroplankton makes so much more sense, just not as a $30 retail game. It retains the spirit of Toshio Iwai's work, but because of that, it really does feel like an attraction you admire for 5 minutes and then move on. So there's value here as an art piece, just not as a game. It's completely understandable as to why it received a limited release here in North America, and how later on they divided the game up into 10 separate applications on the Nintendo DSi shop for $2 a pop. The problem is, I already thought the game was lacking in content as a full release. Now you're releasing 1/10 of Electroplankton? This is a crumb! But as a Touch Generations title, I mean, I think Mom could play this. I'm just not sure she'd know why she's playing it. Really interesting and undeniably unique, Electroplankton is a cool thing. I just think it needs more meat on its bones. If you're gonna be more art piece than game, that's fine. You just can't expect me to accept it 16 years later. Now, if we want something that's more of a game, we can't do much better than the original Clubhouse Games. A collection of mostly tabletop games, cards, checkers, chess, dominoes, and even some lounge-style games like darts, bowling, billiards. In total, there's 42 different games to choose from, with challenges to complete via mission mode, local multiplayer, or online multiplayer. How did they make this then release Sudoku by itself? Clubhouse Games is still an outstanding value. And these games are timeless, and these versions are still fun today. It's easy to see where they cut corners, though. I mean, one of the games is Soda Shake. Nintendo, I don't need you for this. I feel a bit spoiled because I actually played the 2020 follow-up on Nintendo Switch before the original, and the large icons and visual variety and quality really do make it a bit harder to play the one that started it all. I do find the user interface and text to be a bit too small and not as instantly understandable, intuitive, and inviting as its successor, but at the end of the day, Dots and Boxes is still Dots and Boxes. Though again, Nintendo, I don't need you for this. Clubhouse Games has so much value that it makes other Touch Generations titles feel lacking in comparison, like True Swing Golf. It's golf. I mean, this is perfectly fine. It uses the touchscreen effectively to swing your club, meaning, yeah, I'd say this is pretty easy for anybody to pick up and play. It's also golf. That's crazy. I can get 23 minutes out of a single blind on a controller, but True Swing Golf, I come out dry. Now Tetris DS, I'm coming out soaked. Yeah, this was a Touch Generations game, and while I understand why, it feels like anything but. Tetris is one of the most widely played and accessible games out there. So what's the version on one of the most widely played and accessible handhelds of all time like? Oh my god, it's fucking Frog Mario! It's Tetris for me! Tetris DS's visual identity is nothing but classic NES games by Nintendo. Super Mario Brothers, The Legend of Zelda, Donkey Kong, Metroid, Ice Climber. It oddly gives Tetris DS absolutely no identity of its own, yet a ton of character at the same time. And the sheer amount of modes on this player, like, Jesus Christ, they're just blocks, guys! One of the greatest Tetris games of all time. Touch Generations worthy? Of course, but like, why label this as the one for everybody? Well, keeping with the puzzle games, how about Planet Puzzle League? They're just giving planets to anybody. Puzzle League, also known as Anything But. Originally a Japanese-only title named Panel de Pon, later localized in North America as Tetris Attack, then receiving a sequel titled Pokemon Puzzle League, followed by Pokemon Puzzle Challenge, then Dr. Mario and Puzzle League, and now none of the above. One of my favorite puzzle games. It's garbage here. I mean, it's fine, but like, we go from the amazing personality and charm featured in the past games to what I think a robot sees. This is Puzzle League for those who can't feel. Like, would you want to hug space? No. The color yellow? Oh, any day. This game just feels so beaten down with the casual stick. They're trying to make it as bland as possible to appeal to the everyman. And I think that ruins a lot of what makes Puzzle League so enjoyable. And plus, using the touchscreen to slide pieces around just isn't as fun or satisfying as using the buttons for me. I mean, all of this can be changed via the options. We can choose to just use buttons, swap between book style and normal style. There's even loads of different themes to choose from. But this lack of identity is baked into Planet Puzzle League's DNA. This is a meaty game overall. It has loads of modes and things to do. I think it's quite good. Probably one of the best in the overall very small and niche Puzzle League series. Though to me, it's one of the most forgettable entries due to how bland everything is. They brain aged my Tetris Attack. It's like they marketed this as a brain booster, something to play once a day. If you wanted to make Tetris Attack educational, just keep the damn Yoshins and have them spout history facts. Now, Planet Puzzle League wasn't the only older Nintendo series to get a Touch Generations coat of paint. Picross DS, a new take on the Picross puzzle game formula introduced with Mario's Picross on Game Boy. And while a whole slew of variations and sequels were released in Japan, Picross DS was only the second Picross game to get a release outside of that country. Well, it's not Mario's Picross anymore, so I guess he didn't get the prenup. Just because Mario was featured in the original game, that didn't make this a Mario game in my opinion. There were a couple of Mario-themed puzzles, but for the most part, the puzzles comprised of pretty generic things. So Picross DS being just a themeless puzzle game isn't heart-wrenching like Planet Puzzle League was. This is Picross. Use the touchscreen now, which works perfectly. There's a bunch of puzzles to complete. Yeah, I think this fits within the Touch Generations label. Sure, it was originally a Game Boy game, but it definitely feels at home right next to the other titles like Crosswords DS and Sudoku Gridmaster. I can see casuals understanding and enjoying this one quite a bit.
Oh my god, we have a fatality! Not ease of use!
Picross 3D, an interpretation of the standard Picross formula, but now in a 3D space. Definitely harder to jump into, but far more satisfying to master. The Picross 3D is a wonderful puzzler, probably the most unique across the entire Touch Generations line, which isn't saying much. Magnetica was actually one of the first titles with the logo on them. This is a game that everybody's played a variant of at one point or another. It's officially gone under numerous other names like Puzzle Loop and Ballistic, and was pretty much copied in games like Zuma. It's just a color matching puzzle game. You get random colored balls to shoot into a twisting lineup of colors, shoot it into a space where you can clear a bunch of the same color. It's fun for a bit, not much else to this one in particular, just a fine version of something that has a million different clones elsewhere. Unlike Master of Illusion. You want to talk about games that ain't games? This is a magic kit. You dare make this for a general audience and feature this character? Mom, it's Barbara the Bat!
That's not a bat, those are boobs!
Master of Illusion comes in this big box containing a pack of playing cards for you to test out some magic acts with. The game teaches you step by step on how to perform some tricks while also using the DS in some performances. The character Barbara the Bat was from a mostly Japan exclusive DS series, Daigaso Band Brothers, which got a Europe release, Jam with the Band, though never came over here to North America. Outside of a few Super Smash Bros. Appearances and Super Mario Maker, Master of Illusion is her only game in this country. I always knew this slogan was full of shit. Keeping with the tutorial game genre, Art Academy. Did you know this game released as two separate smaller titles on the Nintendo DSi shop in 2009 as Art Academy First Semester and Second Semester, with the boxed release combining the two a year later in 2010? I never knew that, I just assumed the DSiWare games came afterwards. Well, Art Academy is exactly what it sounds like. It's not a great digital art program, but it does a sufficient job in giving you some basic art lessons. It's all about teaching you the basics, laying the foundation for what may become a major hobby in the future, which is what the Personal Trainer series was all about. Calling it a series is pushing it though. All of these games, Personal Trainer Cooking, Math, and Walking, were all developed by different people, released with different names in different regions, and all look and play nothing alike. But Nintendo of America decided to give each of them the Personal Trainer title. But then Personal Trainer Cooking got a sequel, and they got rid of the Personal Trainer and replaced it with America's Test Kitchen.
And there was a fifth game in the lineup as well, Personal Trainer Depression.
Personal Trainer Math doesn't really try to be anything special at all, it's just a math educational game. Personal Trainer Cooking and America's Test Kitchen Let's Get Cooking are fine little pieces of cookbook software, and Personal Trainer Walking is definitely the most Nintendo-like of the bunch, being one of the few DS games to feature Miis and coming with pedometers to track your steps. But this isn't much of a game, rather software to analyze your walking and encourage you to walk more. When Personal Trainer Math is the most game-like of the bunch, you know we've gone too deep into the Touch Generations line. What's left? Mystery Case Files Millionaire? It's Where's Waldo, but without Waldo. So it's Where's Waldo? Where the f*** is he? This is a long-running PC game series that Nintendo licensed for the DS, which is definitely interesting. They could have just made their own, but hey, this is a perfectly fine little hidden object game. Nothing extraordinary, but nothing bad either. And that goes for the majority of the Touch Generations lineup on the Nintendo DS. There are some standout titles here, some that revolutionized the gaming industry. But for the most part, these are incredibly simple games, sometimes to a fault. They may be so simple they're on the verge of predatory, like assuming some chucklehead's gonna buy Sudoku Gridmaster. But for the most part, these are all quality enough and help push the gaming industry to include everybody, not just pre-existing video game fans. Which is why the line extended to the Nintendo Wii. Well, that makes no sense.
Touch Generations on Wii is so damn minuscule, I have to ask what the point of it even was. Only a handful of titles here in North America received the branding, the first of which was Big Brain Academy Wii Degree, with the rest being a few of the Wii series titles. Strangely, games like Wii Play and Wii Party were excluded from the line here in North America, though they received it in other countries, with games like Endless Ocean 1 and 2 being labeled as such only in Europe. With these being every game with the branding worldwide, and these being every game with the branding in North America, damn Nintendo, you could have saved some ink, man. Not only does this feel a little out of place considering, well,
I mean, I can't touch my Wii. But the bar for what should be labeled touch generations makes no sense to me. The Mystery Case Files got a follow-up on Wii, the Malgrave Incident. Not a touch generations title. Over on the DS, games like Professor Layton, Polarium, Meteor, Style Savvy, hell, the Nintendo DS browser. Why these weren't branded, but games like Hotel Dusk and Planet Puzzle League were, baffle me. I guess Nintendo just stopped valuing the brand as years went on. They kept making games in some of these series, they still do, which truly does hit home how Touch Generations was merely just an advertising tool outside of Japan. Inside, though, it's obvious to me that the lineup of Touch Generations games in Japan were far more connected to one another. They even released a Touch Generations series soundtrack CD over there, containing a variety of music from casual games and applications from the Wii and DS. I never knew math and dogs shared a universe.
There's even more to the Touch Generation series if we take a look outside of North America, but so much of it is tailor-made to the Japanese market that I got nothing. But that shows how each country considered Touch Generations to be a completely different thing. But that shouldn't take away the importance of this line. The branding itself was completely superfluous, though the essence of the brand and the types of games released under it helped propel gaming to be as big as it is today. So, thank you, Nintendogs.